presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for the 5th day of January 2026. Your reader for this hour is Tom Scanlon. As always, we begin with articles from page 1 of USA Today. Our first article is titled, Trump Shows He'll Use Force to Aid U.S. Interests. And there's a picture of President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela being escorted by DEA agents in New York City. As it turns out, the America First slogan didn't mean President Donald Trump would stop the United States from intervening around the world. The capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in Caracas on January 3rd and his pending arraignment in New York on charges of narco-terrorism are more evidence that his commander-in-chief is willing to assert U.S. economic, energy, and security interests across the globe, not only with forceful rhetoric, but also with force itself. This was a very important symbol, Trump said on Fox News, a Fox and Friends weekend. It said this thing, that we're not going to be pushed around by these countries. With elite military teams and cutting-edge equipment, he boasts, nobody can stop us. Since his inauguration a year ago, a new Trump doctrine has emerged. On his watch, the United States has cited a variety of reasons for bombing a half-dozen countries, including a Christmas Day strike in Nigeria, in response to what he described as attacks on Christians. He has hit Iran's nuclear sites with bunker-busting bombs, a step that previous presidents refused to take despite Israeli entreaties. The day before the Venezuelan operation that captured Maduro, Trump warned Iran that if peaceful protesters on its streets were killed, the United States was locked and loaded and ready to go to rescue them. That threat is everything we voted against in 2024, said former MAGA loyalist Marjorie Taylor Greene, now a Trump critic. She's referring to America First, a slogan Trump used in all three of his presidential campaigns. Greene and other core supporters interpreted that as a pledge to avoid foreign entanglements, especially those that could risk endless wars, like those in Iraq and Afghanistan. Instead, as president, he was promising to focus on problems within the U.S. border. But during his second term, Trump's approach to the world has stood in clear contrast to that. He's been willing not only to deploy forces abroad, but also to commit the United States to shaping the foreign regimes that follow. After pushing for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, he appointed himself chairman of the Board of Peace, tasked with establishing security and encouraging economic development in Gaza. Regarding Venezuela, he said Washington wouldn't leave until a new and friendly government was installed. We're going to run the country until such a time we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition, he said, though he didn't detail precisely what that would entail. He warned would-be leaders of Venezuela who might want to defy the United States that what happened to Maduro could happen to them next. Where will we go next? Protested Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat. Will the president deploy our troops to protect Iranian protesters? To enforce the fragile ceasefire in Gaza? To battle terrorists in Nigeria? To seize Greenland or the Panama Canal? That said, the Trump doctrine has always had boundaries. For one, he generally has avoided deploying ground troops, which is typically a more dangerous duty than bombing strikes by planes or drones. We're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have them, he said in a news conference at his Mar-a-Lago retreat in Florida. But he later demurred that only the U.S. forces he foresaw in Venezuela would be protecting oil fields. For another, his motivation for acting is not a gauzy pursuit of democracy and human rights, he says, but rather the hard-headed calculation of natural interests, especially financial ones, and especially involving energy. He brushed off criticism the administration had notified Congress before launching Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela. Democrats are weak, stupid people, he said on Fox News. They should say, great job. They shouldn't say, oh, gee, maybe it's not constitutional. Much of what Trump has done in the White House has been unprecedented, and not this time. In December 1989, President George H.W. Bush ordered an invasion of Panama and captured the Panamanian President Manuel Noriega on charges of drug trafficking and racketeering. As it happened, Noriega was taken into custody on January 3, 1990, precisely 36 years prior to Maduro. Noriega would be tried in Miami and convicted, serving 17 years in a U.S. prison. In an address to the nation at the time, Bush said the invasion was justified because Panama had declared a state of war with the United States because it was needed to protect American citizens living in Panama and to defend democracy and human rights. He did not seek congressional authorization either. The operation also sparked international outrage. Trump's assertion of U.S. dominance of the Western Hemisphere has a much longer history. The Monroe Doctrine, articulated by President James Monroe in 1823, held that any intervention by a foreign power in the Americas would be viewed as a hostile act. Since then, it's often been cited to justify U.S. intervention in Latin America. Trump mentioned it too as he took a victory lap at his news conference. A spectacular assault had brought an outlaw dictator to justice, he said. When a reporter asked how running a South American country was America first, he replied mildly the United States needed good neighbors, regional stability, and access to oil. Under Maduro, Venezuela had violated core principles of American foreign policy dating back more than 2 centuries, all the way back to the Monroe Doctrines, Trump said, warming onto the topic. The Monroe Doctrine's a big deal, but we have superseded it by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Doctrine, he said. He dismissed out of hand the reality of the U.S. intervention in Latin America has had decidedly mixed results. Not with me, he said. We have a perfect record of winning. Next question. Our next article is titled Notable New Laws Hitting the Books. Bingo players tourists among affected groups. As 2026 begins, new laws are taking effect across the country. Many of the new regulations show how states are responding to some of the issues facing Americans. Virginia will limit the amount of time children under age 16 can spend on social media to an hour a day per platform, unless a parent or guardian allows for more screen time. Tennessee will begin tracking repeat domestic violence offenders in a public database. Hawaii will charge travelers an additional fee. California will boost its ban on plastic bags. And Indiana will take steps to ensure charities that run bingo and raffle games don't turn into full-blown casinos. Here are some of the most notable new pieces of legislation that took effect January 1st. Bingo night restrictions. A new Indiana law prohibits facilities that host bingo or casino game nights from doing so more than 3 nights a week. Comes after the state's gaming commission accused a local Elks Lodge of racketeering tied to its charity casino and seized more than $100,000. Animal Abuser Registry. Florida created an online database that tracks the names of people who've been found guilty or pleaded guilty or no contest to animal cruelty charges. Pet sellers, rescue organizations, and residents in the state will be able to use this searchable public site to ensure they're not giving an animal to a known abuser. Several other states, including Delaware and Tennessee, have similar databases. Domestic Violence Offender Registry. Tennessee is now tracking repeated domestic violence offenders in a public database. The registry includes the name, date of birth, conviction dates, counties of conviction, and a photo of the offender. But the law applies only to people who receive at least their second conviction on or after January 1st. The registry is the first of its kind in the country. Green fee for tourists. Travelers visiting Hawaii must now pay an additional fee that helps the state fund climate change resilient projects and environmental stewardship. Passed in 2025, the green fee raised the tax placed on nightly lodging rates in Hawaii by 0.75% to a total of 11%. It applies to travelers staying in hotels, short-term vacation rentals, and on cruise ships. Expected to generate $100 million a year for the state and comes amid an increase in natural disasters like the 2023 Maui wildfires. Enhanced plastic bag ban. California is widening its ban on plastic bags. Though the state banned single-use plastic bags in 2014, it allows stores to offer thicker plastic bags customers could reuse. Now it's prohibiting all plastic bags after finding that consumers weren't reusing the thicker bags and bags were still ending up in landfills. The update ban comes amidst mixed findings about a variety of plastic bag bans. Social media limits for minors. Virginia now limits the amount of time children younger than 16 can spend on social media to 1 hour a day per platform, unless a parent or guardian allows for more screen time. The law, signed by outgoing Governor Glenn Youngkin, places the onus directly on social media companies such as TikTok, Meta, and YouTube. The law is the first of its kind to cap children's daily use of social media. Texas is implementing a similar law targeted at the use of online platforms, requiring users to verify their age before downloading any mobile app. Children under 18 will need parental permission to download an app. AI restrictions. Texas is regulating how residents can use artificial intelligence. The law, called the Texas Responsible Artificial Intelligence Governance Act, bans people from developing or deploying AI that intentionally aims to encourage self-harm or crimes against others. It also prohibits the government from using AI to track people's biometric data and sets up a government council to guide the state's regulation and use of the technology. Non-citizens license law. Wyoming now requires that legal U.S. residents who are not citizens, including green card holders, have the phrase "not U.S. citizen" inscribed on their driver's license or identification card. The law does not retroactively apply to people who already have their license. It appears to be the first law of its kind in the country. Panic buttons for workers. Isolated employees in Washington who often work alone are now required to carry a panic button while they work. The button must be provided by their employer. Other states and localities have passed similar laws in recent years to protect workers from violence. Domestic violence awareness training for cosmetologists. Licensed hairdressers, nail technicians, barbers, and others, cosmetologists in Maryland must complete 1 hour domestic violence awareness training to renew their professional licenses. The idea behind the law is that stylists are in a unique position to spot bruises and other signs of abuse. Arkansas, New York, Illinois, Tennessee are among several states that have enacted similar laws in recent years. You're listening or reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 14 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled Day of Freedom for Venezuelans in Florida. South Florida residents enjoy festive atmosphere. Dateline, Palm Beach, Florida. Miriam Hidalgo awoke at 3 a.m. on January 3rd to the phone call the 66-year-old Venezuelan American had waited decades to receive. The United States has taken Nicolas Maduro, her homeland's president, into custody. The move filled a Palm Beach County, Florida resident who moved to the United States in 1995 to raise her 2 daughters away from the instability she felt brewing in the place she was born, with relief and joy. After 30 years of living in this country, to see the government doing something so wonderful makes me so happy, Hidalgo said as she stood hours later with other supporters near Mar-a-Lago, the Palm Beach estate where President Donald Trump gave the order to make the military action happen. Hidalgo was one of thousands of people across South Florida to stop and celebrate the ouster of a man whose government they say is marked by corruption, authoritarian tactics, widespread food shortages, collapse of public services, hyperinflation, and, U.S. prosecutors say, narco-terrorism. Edgar Rodriguez got his call about the operation in Caracas 2 hours before Hidalgo. He stood in a sea of Venezuelan colors, red, blue, and yellow, outside the El Paraiso restaurant in Doral, Florida, and said the ouster of the South American nation's strongman had him hoping that one day he might return home. It's 26 years of a nightmare, Rodriguez, a coordinator for Vente Venezuela, the political party many said ousted Maduro from the presidency in 2024 election. So many innocent people have died. There are so many tortured political prisoners and families separated by people being forced to flee the country. Today is the day of freedom, Rodriguez added. Today that nightmare finally comes to an end. The scene around Rodriguez grew more festive as more than 100 people descended on the restaurant, a landmark that stands about a mile northwest of Trump National Doral Miami Golf Club. Some draped a Venezuelan flag on their backs, others held posters saying "Freedom for Venezuela" and "Until the End," and much of the crowd of more than 100 put their hands on their chests, sang their national anthem, Gloria al Bravo Pueblo, in unison. USA, 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 they chanted as they finished. Even a timbalero showed up to entertain the crowd, ending his percussion show by screaming, "Viva la Venezuela Libre!" Long live a free Venezuela. "Que viva Venezuela!" the crowd answered. Not everyone gathered near Mar-a-Lago did so to support President Donald Trump's decision. Some thought he should have sought the approval of Congress for ousting a foreign head of state. Trump, in his remarks January 3rd, said forming Congress could have led to the operation being leaked. Paula McLeese, age 74, of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, was one of 9 protesters outside Trump's Palm Beach estate. They stood across the street from a crowd of Trump supporters, about 3 times their size, who wore MAGA hats and waved Venezuelan flags. The group of 9 joked that while they opposed Trump, they wouldn't mind if their leader of another country took a page from his book, brought the U.S. president into custody. "I'm resisting this fascist regime that's been forced to live under since 2016, with a little break from President Joe Biden," McLeese said, holding a Fight Fascism sign. "We're resisting the lawlessness of this presidency." McLeese said her parents, whom she described as World War II survivors and Republicans, shaped her sense of civic responsibility and are rolling in their graves. She added she was disappointed by the size of the demonstration, but not surprised. "I think people are in la-la land," she said. "They don't feel the threat." Asked about the Venezuelan Americans across the street, who said they welcome the recent development as a chance for peace for the country, McLeese disagreed. No, Venezuelan people should be fighting," she said. "What our leader did was break our own laws. 2 wrongs do not make a right." She added that Congress had voted to approve the move. She likely would have supported it. "We hate Trump," shouted a man standing beside her. Passing driver shouted back, "We hate you." By noon, 2 groups of Trump supporters had appeared outside of Mar-a-Lago. One waved American flags, wore MAGA hats, and screamed invectives at small gatherings of protesters across the street. Protesters screamed back, trading insults and curses as cars honked between them. The other group, a minute's walk west, showed less anger and more euphoria. They held Venezuelan flags, laughed, embraced, sang Spanish, and chanted, "Free Venezuela, free Venezuela. Finally, Venezuela is free." Hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan nationals had fled the United States, receiving temporary protected status to live and work here. Trump's administration is in the process of removing that status, potentially leaving many of them without valid work permits and subject to deportation. Some say would be glad to go home to a free and safe Venezuela. Elizabeth Garcia stood outside of El Paraíso holding a banner of Maria Cortina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner who may be believed defeated Maduro in the 2024 election. We are all in jubilee here in Doral, Garcia said. Our next article is titled, Trump Ends His Push for Guard. Deployment over in Chicago, L.A., and Portland. President Donald Trump said in a social media post on Wednesday, December 31st, he's abandoning efforts to deploy National Guard troops to Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland, Oregon, in the face of several legal defeats. We are moving the National Guard from Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland, despite the fact that crime, that's in capital letters, has been greatly reduced by having these great patriots in those cities, and only by that fact, Trump wrote in the Post. Trump's move to rescind the deployments comes as the White House faced legal challenges around the country for deploying troops over the objection of state governors. The president deployed about 4,000 California Guardsmen and 700 Marines to the streets of Los Angeles. Legal challenges prevented troops from actually deploying to the streets of Chicago and Portland, Oregon. Still, federal forces will come back if crime rates rise, the president vowed. Trump said the deployment of military troops to Democratic-led cities was aimed at enforcing immigration laws and fighting crime. Democrats who had challenged the president over the troop deployment celebrated the decision. About time at real Donald Trump admitted defeat, California Governor Gavin Newsom said on X. We said it from day one, the federal takeover of Florida's National Guard is illegal. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker noted crime already was down in his state before Trump moved to deploy troops. Illinois and Chicago reduced crime with smart investments in police and community violence reduction programs. Meanwhile, Trump cut federal support for both, Pritzker said in a statement. No matter how many lies he tells, who keeps standing up for truth and against his abuse of power. Trump's move comes hours after his administration dropped his fight to keep California National Guard troops under the president's control after a months-long legal battle. The White House had tried deploying California troops to Oregon and Illinois. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals subsequently ruled December 31st that control of California National Guard troops must be returned to Governor Gavin Newsom, lifting an earlier stay on the district court ruling, according to an order reviewed by USA Today. Today's order affirms what we said from the beginning. Trump administration's choice of federalized and deployed National Guard troops in Los Angeles was unlawful, U.S. Senator Alex Padilla, a Democrat from California, said in a December 31st statement provided to USA Today. This deployment is reckless, harmful, and abuse of executive power that has put service members in an impossible position. The Supreme Court weighed in on the president's controversial use of military troops in a December 23rd decision, blocking deployments from moving forward in Chicago as challenges unfold. Early in November, a district judge ruled the Trump administration violated the 10th Amendment, which protects the rights of states in sending troops to Portland, and that the deployment exceeds the president's authority. The National Guard, which typically operates under control of governors, can be called into federal service by the president only under certain circumstances. Portland, Los Angeles, and Chicago are gone if it weren't for the federal government stepping in, Trump said in the Post. We'll come back, perhaps as much different and stronger form, when crime begins to soar again. Only a question of time. Our next article is titled, Officials. Sparklers Cause Bar Fire. Explosion and fire at Swiss resort kills 40. Officials believe sparklers on top of champagne bottles are to blame for the bar explosion and fire that left around 40 dead, more than 100 others injured at a New Year's Eve party in Crans-Montana, Switzerland. Around 1:30 a.m. local time on January 1st, a fire broke out at a bar called La Constellation in the Versailles region in southwestern Switzerland, killing about 40 and injuring another 115, as Versailles police said. What was a moment of joy turned into a tragedy in Crans-Montana last night. It felt across the country and beyond, Swiss President Guy Parmelin said in a statement on X. Identifying the victims could take several days or weeks, Valais told police in a news release. The U.S. Embassy in Bern, Switzerland said a statement that it is in close contact with Swiss authorities and encouraged U.S. citizens in the country to notify family and friends of their safety. Crans-Montana is a resort town popular with international tourists, skiers, and golfers. It's scheduled to be a stop on the FIS Alpine Ski World Cup Tour at the end of January. Beatrice Palau, Valais Attorney General, said at a news conference on January 2nd that officials believe the fire was caused by sparkling candles on top of champagne bottles. Everything suggests that the fire started from the burning candles or Bengal lights that had been attached to champagne bottles. These were too close to the ceiling. From there, a rapid, very rapid, and widespread conflagration ensued, Palau said, per Reuters. Officials are still continuing the investigation into the incident, Palau said. Video footage verified by Reuters showed a chaotic scene as people rushed to get out of the building moments after the fire broke out. An official death toll has not yet been confirmed as investigators work to identify all the victims. Matthias Renard, head of government of the canton of Valais, said experts are using dental and DNA samples to identify victims, but confirmation will take time because of the severity of their injuries, Reuters reported. All this work needs to be done because the information is so terrible and sensitive that nothing can be told to the families unless we are 100% sure, Renard said. Per Reuters, Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said that 13 Italians were hospitalized and 6 were missing. The French embassy in Switzerland said that 9 French nationals have been identified among the injured, but more are possible. Officials believe many of the victims are young people and teenagers. Among them is Emanuele Gallipini, 16, an Italian golfer who lived in Dubai. Several outlets, including Reuters, reported. The Italian Golf Federation confirmed Gallipini's death, saying he was a young athlete who carried with him passion and genuine values. Our last article for the first section of USA Today is titled, Google Grows Beyond Searches. Google processes more than 8.5 billion searches per day, according to tech company estimates. An estimated 1.3 billion websites on the Internet, although only 15 to 17% are active. Google's scope is far from reaching the massive number after which it was named, but it grows larger by the day. Originally launched as a search engine, the company has expanded immensely. Google owns YouTube, and its purchase of Android allowed the company to establish itself in the phone market with products such as the Google Pixel smartphone. Google was founded by Larry Page and Sergey Brin on September 4, 1998, after a $100,000 investment from Andy Bechtolsheim, co-founder of Sun Microsystems. Page and Brin filed for Google's initial public stock offering on April 29, 2004, according to history, and the company went public in August of 2004. Google renamed its company Alphabet 2015, making Google a subsidiary. This move was intended to avoid antitrust violations and unite all the company's acquisitions and services as a technology conglomerate, according to Investopedia. 2019, Page and Brin stepped down from their respective roles as CEO and president. The company's current CEO is Sundar Pichai. In early October 2006, Google purchased YouTube for $1.65 billion. The current CEO is Neil Mohan, who in 2023 took over from Susan Wojcicki, who was Google's 16th ever employee. According to Wired, Google acquired Android in 2005 for $50 million, an investment that's paid off. Statistica data revealed that more than 80% of smartphones across the globe have run Android operations since 2014. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. We turn now to the money section of USA Today, and our first article is titled The Fine Print. Newborns will get $1,000 Trump accounts, but there's a catch. Newborns can look forward to the promised Trump accounts in the new year, but if parents, grandparents, friends, or relatives plan to contribute, they can look for a tax headache, experts say. Trump accounts are saving accounts to encourage children and families to save and build wealth for the many expenses of adulthood. Starting in July, the government will seed the accounts with $1,000 to all children born in the year 2025 to 2028 with a Social Security number, thanks to the tax and spending package passed last summer. Parents and others may contribute up to $5,000 a year, with employers allowed to contribute half that cap into the accounts until the child turns 18. But because individual contributions don't qualify for the gift tax annual exclusion, the donor must file a tax gift return or Form 709 for each contribution, whether it's the $25 minimum or the $5,000 maximum, experts say. It may sound like a small inconvenience until Americans discover Form 709 isn't generally available on do-it-yourself tax platforms like TurboTax or Jackson Hewitt, and may require an accountant, said Amber Waldman, Estate and Gifts Senior Director of RSM's Washington National Tax Practice. This is a significant tax compliance issue, she said. Contributions to Trump accounts aren't included as part of the annual gift tax exclusion of $19,000 per person because they aren't considered gifts of present interest. Gifts of present interest means the recipient can access and immediately use the gift. Trump account money generally isn't available till the child turns 18. Educational 529 saving plans were exempt by Congress. When 529s were created, Congress explicitly said contributions shall be treated as a completed gift to such beneficiaries, which is not a future interest in property. Neither the IRS nor Treasury can fix this administratively, Waldman said. Congress would have to act, and so far there have been no such legislative proposals. Failing to file, even if you owe no tax, creates risk, Waldman warns. The IRS can use an omission against taxpayers in an audit, she said. Americans can file Form 709 by printing, completing, and mailing the form to the IRS, or file it electronically, typically through an authorized provider or business using the IRS modernized e-file system. If taxpayers choose to use an accountant, the filing could cost more than the contribution itself, Waldman said. Richard Pond, a certified public accountant in San Francisco, said this is the gift trap for Trump accounts. Are Trump accounts still worth it? Most financial advisors say yes. Trump accounts are still free money. It's hard not to take away free money, said Dan White, founder and CEO of Daniel A. White and Associates in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. If someone gives you money, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. That may be true of the initial $1,000 from the government, but Americans should weigh all their saving options when it comes to their contributions, experts say. Japan, Trump accounts are a waste of time. Aside from the hassle of Form 709, he noticed there's no tax deduction for contribution, and withdrawals are taxed. Withdrawals before the age of 59 and a half can also incur a 10% penalty. If a kid was lucky enough to have an earned income, they're better off with a Roth IRA, which becomes tax-free, he said. If a kid was saving for education, they'd be better off with a 529, as qualifying distributions are tax-free, and some states allow deduction or tax credit for the contribution. Roth IRAs are funded with after-tax money, but withdrawals are tax-free. Trump account funds also must be invested in low-cost index funds with fees of 0.1% or less, no leverage, and primarily U.S. equity exposure. In 2024, the average fee for equity mutual funds was 0.4% and 0.14% for index equity ETFs, according to nonprofit trade group Investment Company Institute. Our next article is titled U.S. Mint's New Coins Celebrate Birthday. The U.S. Mint is issuing special circulation coins to celebrate the 250th anniversary of America's adoption of the Declaration of Independence. Quarters, dimes, and nickels minted in 2026 will bear special designs or markings reflecting milestones related to the nation's founding in 1776. The U.S. Mint revealed a coin design on December 11th. Each of the coins will have history-related imagery and the dual dates of 1776, 2026. 5 semi-quintillion quarter designs will bear the likeness of founding fathers, including George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and James Madison. The dime will have the face of liberty with inscriptions including liberty over tyranny. The nickel keeps the image of Thomas Jefferson but adds 1776, 2026 designation. The U.S. Mint will also issue a collectible enduring life half dollar and a collectible 1776, 2026 penny. Designs on these historic coins depict the story of America's journey toward a more perfect union and celebrate America's defining ideals of liberty, said Christy McNally, acting director of the U.S. Mint, in a news release. We hope to offer each American the opportunity to hold our nation's storied 250 years of history in the palms of their hands as we connect America through coins. Get people excited about coin collecting. These new coins to celebrate the National Semi-Centennial, the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, are reminiscent of coins issued by the U.S. Mint for the bicentennial, 1976. Back then, the agency issued quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins with special reverse designs for the event. All were circulated among the population, just as traditional quarters were. But the Mint did sell special sets of coins and plans to do so for the 250th anniversary. No dates or prices yet. It's an opportunity for Mint to do something fun and get people excited about coin collecting. John Feigenbaum, publisher of the Rare Coin Price Guide Gray Sheet, told USA Today, "I love these designs. I think they represent real forward thinking on the Mint's part to honor the 250th anniversary of the coin." Will there be a Trump coin? Not announced, but a possibility. The commemorative $1 coin bearing President Donald Trump's image. In October, the Treasury Department announced it was considering new $1 coins with Trump's image as part of its coin celebration of America's 250th birthday. The Mint has proposed designs for the coin on its website. Federal law prohibits any living person from being on U.S. currency. Here are more details on the 2026 coins, which the Mint will begin to produce after the first of the year. There are 5 designs for the 25-cent coin for the 250th anniversary. All shared the inscriptions such as E Pluribus Unum, In God We Trust, and 1776, 2026. There is the Mayflower Compact Quarter, the Revolutionary War Quarter, the Declaration of Independence Quarter, the U.S. Constitution Quarter, and the Gettysburg Address Quarter. In addition to quarters, the dime and nickel will be updated for the 2026 versions. There'll be an emerging Liberty dime. Liberty will replace Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but the coin keeps its inscriptions of liberty and in God we trust, adding in 1776, 2026. On the back of the coin, there's an eagle with arrows in its talons. Inscriptions include liberty over tyranny and e pluribus unum. The U.S. Mint will issue other special coins, including a commemorative 2026 version of the defunct penny. It will not be circulated, but instead will be sold directly from the mint. No prices or release dates yet. There'll be an enduring Liberty half dollar. The 50-cent piece, which currently carries the image of John F. Kennedy, for 2026 will show a close-up of the Statue of Liberty and inscriptions "In God We Trust" and 1776, 2026. The 1776, 2026 penny. For 1 year only, it will include the dual dates of 1776 and 2026, although this coin will no longer circulate in pocket change in 2026. It can be purchased as a collectible from the U.S. Mint. The new coins will likely spur interest in coin collecting, just as did the Treasury Department demise of the penny, said Finkelbaum. He's also the executive director of the Professional Numismatists Guild, a nonprofit organization composed of many of the nation's rare coin experts. But average collectors should know these coins released to celebrate the nation's 250th birthday will not necessarily be rare, he said. We just want to know that they're super fun and interesting to collect. Our next article is titled, "Nearly 7% of retirees don't take distributions. Missing financial tasks can lead to tax issues." 'Tis the season for last-minute shopping, family get-togethers, and year-end financial tasks. But many Americans forget the last item, or don't do it correctly, leading to tax penalties and often similar mistakes in subsequent years, according to a new report. The analysis from wealth management behemoth Vanguard looks at required minimum distributions, or RMDs. Millions of Americans participate in retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs, which allow participants to tuck away money tax-free till later in life. As their name implies, RMDs set a minimum amount that must be withdrawn and taxed once those account holders hit a certain age. 73 for traditional IRAs and 401ks. Among Vanguard clients with traditional IRA accounts, nearly 7% of those for whom RMDs are required failed to take any withdrawal from their Vanguard account 2024. Another 24%, meanwhile, took a withdrawal that was too low to meet the requirement. The 7% who took no RMD whatsoever incurred a potential tax penalty ranging from $1,160 to $2,900, the analysis found. What's more, investors who completed their RM 1 year tend to do it again the following year, but 55% of those who miss an RMD1 also fail to take a distribution the next year. Rather than set and forget, many simply forget and forget, said Andy Reid, Vanguard head of the behavioral economics research, in a report. Most investors who missed their RMD had balances under $5,000. Only 2.5% of investors with balances over $1 million did. With all that in mind, what can investors do to protect themselves? Vanguard notes that many IRA providers offer free auto RMD services. Also, since smaller accounts may be more prone to being overlooked when it comes to maintenance, like RMDs, consolidating them might simplify financial and retirement planning decisions. You're listening to a reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled, Nearly 3,000 pounds of beef is recalled. E. coli contamination a concern for ground beef. Packages of ground beef that were distributed in 6 states are being recalled for concerns of E. coli contamination. Mountain West Food Group recalled 2,850 pounds of raw ground beef sold under the Forward Farms brand, according to U.S. Department of Agriculture release on December 27th. Reese said the potential contamination was flagged during routine food safety and inspection service testing after sampling results showed the presence of E. coli 026. There were no reports of illness connected with the recall, the release said. Consumers had the recall meat advised to throw it away or return it to where it was purchased. USA Today reached out to a Montana West Food Group for comment on December 29th and did not receive an immediate response. The recall covers 1-pound vacuum-sealed packages of ground beef labeled Forward Farms grass-fed ground beef with user freeze by 1/13/2026 printed on the side of the package. According to the USDA, the ground beef packages were distributed to the following states for retail sales: California, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Pennsylvania, and Washington. Most E. coli, or Escherichia coli, bacteria reside harmlessly in the intestines for people and animals, but some can cause mild to life-threatening gastrointestinal illnesses if consumed, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say. Types of E. coli that may cause diarrhea usually spread through food or water contaminated with feces. For instance, food handlers can spread infections when they do not wash their hands properly after using the restroom. Animals such as cattle may also spread E. coli to food and food crops. Symptoms of E. coli infection include severe stomach cramps, diarrhea, often bloody, and vomiting, according to the CDC. Our next article is titled, Reclaim Your Time by Cutting Meetings. Block scheduling can help improve production. Meetings took over Bob Jordan's calendar. Now the Southwest Airlines CEO is doing something about it. He blocks his calendar 3 afternoons a week to escape the back-to-back meetings that keep him from all-important tasks that only the CEO can handle. I think when you first start, it's easy to confuse busyness and going to meetings with leadership, Jordan said in a roundtable discussion at the New York Times DealBook Summit in December. I'm trying in 2026. You're all going to think I'm crazy. To all the afternoons of Wednesday to Friday completely open. What is it for? So that you can work on things you need to work on. You can think about what's important right now. You can call people you need to talk to, Jordan said, because that's what we all find, I'm sure, that there's no time for work, and you confuse going to meetings with work. Meeting bloat, one-on-ones, all-hand meetings, Zooms, and team meetings continue to clog calendars. Unnecessary meetings, those with too many people and no clear objective, or that drone on too long, wander off topic, or devolve into gripe sessions, exhaust already overscheduled workers, sap productivity, and top office pet peeves. Workers are most annoyed by meetings that could have been emails or messages, according to SurveyMonkey research. Managers have tried for years to get control of their runaway meeting train by tightening agendas and shortening sessions. They've held standing meetings and walk and talks, even encouraged people to drink a glass of water beforehand and let nature take its course. But the frequency of meetings that ticked up during the pandemic continues to increase, workplace observers say. According to Philip Arcole, founder of Worklytics, people multitask in more than half of their meeting time, and a third of their attendees never speak. Meeting hygiene isn't just personal productive preference, it's an organizational design problem. Future of Work strategist Stephanie Frione said in a LinkedIn post, meetings are absolutely valuable for alignment, decision-making, and human connection. Without intention, structure, and standards, they risk crowding out the work they're meant to support. With hiring freezes and layoffs, many employees are already doing the jobs of multiple people, not to mention fending off the constant pings of messages and other interruptions. More time spent in meetings leaves even less time for deep work, the ability to focus without distractions. Frequently, the most productive hours of the workday are hijacked by someone else's agenda, according to Microsoft Workplace Research. Half of all meetings take place between 9 and 11 a.m. and 1 and 3 p.m., when circadian rhythms give many people a natural productivity spike. More than half of all meetings are ad hoc calls without a calendar invite, with 1 in 10 meetings scheduled at the last minute. Flooded by meet invites, employees say their days grow longer or bleed into weekends because they have to work early or stay late to make progress on tasks that require a high level of concentration. According to Microsoft, meetings after 8 p.m. are up 16% year over year. For many, the workday now feels like navigating chaos, reacting to others' priorities, and losing focus on what matters most, Microsoft's Work Trend Index survey found. In a time where every hour counts, that drift could quite easily drain energy and stall business progress. When Benjamin Laker, a leadership professor at the University of Reading's Henley Business School, and his colleagues studied the effect of meeting on productivity, they found that employees were 71% more productive when meetings were reduced by 40%. Not all meetings are bad, Laker said. In fact, they can be essential for collaboration and innovation. Meetings can be a great way for teams to come together, exchange ideas, and work toward common goals, Laker told USA Today. We asked Laker for tips on how to have the right meetings. He said, have a purpose for each meeting before scheduling it. Make sure the objectives are clearly defined. Ask yourself if the information can be communicated in another way, such as an email, a Slack, or a team message. Keep meetings short and focused. Try to schedule meetings for the exact amount of time needed and make sure everyone sticks to the agenda. Limit the number of attending meetings and only include those who need to be there. Our next article is titled, Consumer Agencies Must Be Funded, Judge Rules. A federal judge has rejected a claim by President Donald Trump's administration that is legally barred from securing funding for the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, noting a court order already bars the administration from shutting down the agency. The ruling from U.S. District Judge Amy Berman Jackson came as the Bureau faced exhaustion of funds. Trump administration denied additional funding since taking control of the agency in February. Officials say cash on hand could run out in 2026. Representatives from the Trump administration and the Financial Protection Bureau did not immediately respond for a request for comment. The Bureau's supporters say that without it, the public will be more exposed to predatory lending practices, scams, and other abuse. Trump and others have accused it of politicizing enforcement, calling it a burden on free enterprise. The Trump administration has been trying for nearly a year to gut the CFPB at the expense of everyday Americans, Aaron Witt, Director of Consumer Protection for Consumer Federation of America, told USA Today. In its latest attempt, Trump's CFPB made a disingenuous attempt to claim that it could not request funds for the agency, an attempt has been swiftly rejected by a federal judge. The agency was started to protect financial service customers after the financial crisis of 2008. It announced last month that an administrative legal opinion held that under the agency's governing statute could not seek additional funding from the Federal Reserve so long as the central bank is losing money. In a ruling December 30th, Berman Jackson rejected this as an outcome-driven reasoning without basis in the law, said it would violate her March injunction against shutting down the agency so long as a lawsuit plays out in court. It appears that defendants' understanding of combined earnings is unsupported and transparent attempt to achieve the very end of the court's injunction was put in place. She wrote, adding that the administration's unilateral decision to decline further funding was therefore a violation. Which said Jackson's order makes it absolutely clear again that the CFPB is required to fulfill its duties as mandated by Congress, including maintaining the Consumer Complaints Database. They cannot squirrel away its out of duties by relying on this flawed argument. We're glad that the court is reinforcing the actual law, not acting CFP Director Russell Vought flawed interpretations of it, she said. Unlike many federal agencies, the Financial Protection Bureau is funded by the Federal Reserve rather than through a budget that's set annually by Congress. But lawmakers slashed the Bureau's maximum allowable funding in 2025, meaning the agency may face tighter funding constraints regardless. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from USA Today for the 5th day of January on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Tom Scanlon.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your reader for this hour is David Frothingham. The first headline in today's sports section reads, Momentum Building. Indiana, Oregon meet again in Peach Bowl for a juicier reward, by Paul Meyerberg, USA Today. We've seen this before. The Peach Bowl will mark the second meeting this season between number 1 seed Indiana and number 5 Oregon, following the Hoosiers' 30-20 road win in October. The Hoosiers wobbled Oregon with their physical play and dominated things up front, pulling down 6 sacks and 8 tackles for loss to the Ducks 1 and 4, respectively. It was more of the same against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game and Alabama in the Rose Bowl. IU sacked Julian Sayin 5 times in a 13-10 win and then creamed the Crimson Tide in a 38-3 blowout, giving up 193 yards of offense and just 1.5 yards per carry. On the heels of the Rose Bowl, there's no doubt that IU is the favorite to win the national title. Oregon has righted the ship with an 8-game winning streak, punctuated by a 51-34 win against number 12 James Madison and a 23-0 blanking of number 4 Texas Tech. What each team has learned in the months since that October matchup, what improvements each has made, and what new quirks and tricks each could unveil at Mercedes-Benz Stadium will determine which team advances to the college football playoff championship. The pressure is on Oregon. But the pressure is almost entirely on Oregon to prove it has what it takes to stop the Hoosiers' march to perfection. At times this season, the Ducks have looked like the best team in the Power Four. In others, they've seemed much less powerful than the team that won the 2024 Big Ten title. The Orange Bowl showed that Oregon's defense should be up to the challenge. Texas Tech entered the playoff averaging 42.5 points and 480.5 yards per game, but was held to just 215 yards and 3.5 yards per play. While not as dynamic and not as good up front as IU, the Red Raiders were still a top 10 offense in most major categories. It'll take a balanced game to beat the Hoosiers, though, and Oregon's offense was wobbly in the Orange Bowl, averaging just 1.4 yards per carry, counting sacks, and converting just 4 of 19 third downs. That just won't cut it against the most complete team in college football. At least the Ducks are familiar with this type of playoff rematch. In 2024, they earned a bye into the quarterfinals as the unbeaten Big Ten champs, but were blown out of the water in the rematch against eventual national champion Ohio State. 1 year later, is there a takeaway from that result that will help Dan Lanning and Oregon be better prepared for IU? Balanced Indiana will be hard to beat. The Hoosiers will roll into Atlanta with incredible confidence, rightfully so. Just in the past 2 games, IU has toppled mighty Ohio State and handed Alabama its most lopsided loss in nearly 30 years. The offense is outstanding. Quarterback Fernando Mendoza had more touchdowns, 3, than incompletions, 2, against the Tide. Kalon Black had 99 rushing yards. Roman Hemby had 89, and the Hoosiers went for 215 yards on the ground overall, behind a nearly perfect game from the offensive line. And to much less acclaim, the defense might be even better. IU now ranks second nationally in yards, 252.6, and points, 10.3, allowed, and have yet to give up more than 367 yards in a game. Being this good on both sides of the ball gives IU a safety net even against an opponent as talented as Oregon. If needed, the defense can carry the offense and vice versa. Oregon will need to upend the Hoosiers' run to 16-0 by taking them out of their rhythm and comfort zone. Anything less won't stop the best team in college football. The next headline in today's sports section is Fiesta Bowl. Offenses will test defenses in Miami Ole Miss, by Paul Meyerberg. The Fiesta Bowl will be decided on the line of scrimmage. The College Football Playoff national semifinal between number 6 seed Ole Miss and number 10 Miami will come down to whether the Hurricanes can dictate things up front, much like they did in dispatching defending national champion Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. That win sent a clear message about how capably coach Mario Cristobal has installed his inside-out blueprint for rebuilding the program. Ole Miss moved to 2-0 without Lane Kiffin by reversing a 21-12 deficit against number 3 Georgia and winning the Sugar Bowl 39-34. While losers to the Bulldogs during the regular season, the Rebels began to take control in the third quarter thanks to quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, who finished with 362 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even with Kiffin off to LSU, the offense totaled 473 yards on 6.5 yards per play. Key factors for Miami. Now the Hurricanes will face the same challenge of slowing Ole Miss. Whether Hurricane advances to the championship game depends on 2 factors: its ability to command the ball on offense and whether its defensive line can dominate for a second game in a row. Offensively, the Hurricanes will look to establish the run behind junior Mark Fletcher Jr. and a rapidly improving front. If successful, a solid running game opens things up for senior quarterback Carson Beck, who played things safe against the Buckeyes and was without an interception for the 5th time in 6 games. On defense, Miami's defensive front has the potential to give the Rebels fits and take over the Fiesta Bowl. This group bullied the Buckeyes' offensive line and phased a normally unflappable quarterback Julian Sayin, who had his worst game since the season opener against Texas. How Ole Miss beats Miami. But based on its play against number 11 Tulane in Georgia, Ole Miss could make the Hurricanes one-dimensional by limiting Fletcher's impact. While hit or miss during the regular season, the Rebels' run defense held the Green Wave to 115 yards and the Bulldogs to 124 yards, both on 3.4 yards per carry. Slowing down the Hurricanes' ground game will place pressure on Beck to deliver through the air against a pass defense that ranked first in the SEC during the regular season in opposing completion percentage, 56.2, and gave up only 6.4 yards per attempt. Whether Ole Miss can protect Chambliss will likely be one of the game's deciding factors. The Rebels have given up 18 sacks in 14 games and held the Bulldogs to just 3 tackles for loss. The Hurricanes added 5 sacks against OSU and now has a Football Bowl subdivision, best 46 on the season. Chambliss is the game's key player. Chambliss's mobility will help. The senior is able to keep plays alive with his legs and make plays on the move, occasionally tucking and running to extend drives. He has run for 520 yards, second on the team, and 8 scores. If able to get into a rhythm, Chambliss, running back Kuen Lacey, and Ole Miss will be hard to keep under wraps. One factor that played into Miami's hands in the Cotton Bowl was Ohio State's tendency to play at a much slower tempo than Ole Miss. The Rebels often sprint to the line as soon as the play ends and look to snap the ball soon after. So Miami has to disrupt that rhythm by winning on first down and setting Chambliss into longer third down conversions. But even that isn't a sure thing. Heading into the Super Bowl, the senior led the SEC with 154.3 efficiency rating on third down. The next headline in today's USA Today sports section reads, "Efficiency is enough for Darnold Seahawks." Just like last year, Sam Darnold went into a Week 18 regular season finale needing to come up big on the road against a division rival. What a difference a year makes. Darnold was splendid for the Seattle Seahawks on Saturday night, January 3rd, pouring cold water on whatever the narrative suggested about how the embattled quarterback might perform at the juncture of this season. What, you were waiting for a Darnold turnover that would give San Francisco 49ers a jolt of momentum? Keep waiting. Sure, there was almost a turnover, a muffed exchange in the third quarter that could have set the 49ers up in striking range, but Seattle running back Zach Charbonnet recovered that fumble, averting disaster. It was that kind of night. The Seahawks blasted San Francisco 13-3 to clinch the NFC West crown and number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs with a franchise record 14th win. Darnold was cool, efficient, and all that, but as much as you may remember his setbacks with the Minnesota Vikings last season, losing in Week 18 at Detroit, then falling at the Los Angeles Rams in the wild card round of the playoffs, it wasn't so much about Darnold. Not as long as he's protecting the football, not as long as the running game is producing like it has lately, shredding the 49ers for 180 rushing yards in the latest demonstration, and not as long as the defense is packing its usual punch. With that, Darnold, who entered the game tied for third in the NFL with 13 interceptions, was representative of a larger picture. The Seahawks, 14-3, sent a message with their latest triumph that they are the most complete team headed into the playoffs. That's great for Darnold. He doesn't have to be the GOAT. No, with that spectacular defense and a running game powered by the 1-2 punch of Kenneth Walker III and Charbonnet, and talented targets including Jackson Smith Njigba, Darnold likely wins as long as he's not the GOAT. No need for hero ball. Seahawks rushing attacks, defense relieving pressure on Darnold. Sure, there comes a time when any and every quarterback trying to win a big game against top-shelf competition. In Saturday's games, this was also tested by Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, and Bryce Young, has to make a big throw, or a few. Darnold certainly had crucial throws on Saturday, including a 24-yard strike to Cooper Kupp to convert a third down late in the fourth quarter. But for the most part, it was a testament to efficiency. He completed 20 of 26 passes for 198 yards without a touchdown. And he did a fine job handing or tossing the football to Walker and Charbonnet. Walker carried 16 times for 97 yards. Charbonnet ran 17 times for 74 yards and bolted around the left corner for a 27-yard touchdown. It was the third straight game the rushing attack rolled with a district smash-mouth flavor. On December 28th at Carolina, the Seahawks ran for 163 yards, led by Charbonnet's 110 yards. In the wild Week 16 comeback win against the Rams, they ran for 171 yards, led by Walker's 100. So, with either running back capable of carrying the load, the rushing attack is rounding into form at the perfect time, which takes significant pressure off Darnold. Meanwhile, Seattle's defense relieves pressure too from Darnold, while applying it to quarterbacks such as Purdy. The Seahawks stifled one of the NFL's hottest offenses. San Francisco topped 40 points in its previous two games, in keeping the 49ers out of the end zone. Seattle allowed just 9 first downs and 173 net yards to go with the 3 points. Maybe the Seahawks will return to Levi's Stadium to close the season in Super Bowl 60. Suddenly, their chances are much better, given the bye week and home field advantage throughout the playoffs, where they will be backed by the 12s at one of the NFL's noisiest venues, Lumen Field. Home turf, home crowd, home cooking. Happy New Year, Sam Darnold. It's a different year indeed, with the Seahawks poised to keep writing a new narrative that could take him places he's never seen before on this NFL journey. The next headline in today's sports section is Change NFL Playoff Format. NFC South champion isn't deserving of a home game. New Year's glass way more than half full. At least you can say the College Football Selection Committee isn't involved here. That said, it's high time for the NFL to tweak its most sensible codified rules determining who advances to the playoffs. As currently constructed, said rules will ensure a team with a losing record hosts a playoff game this season. So too might a divisional champion merely one game above 500. Meanwhile, teams with a dozen wins or more may be sent packing on the wild card road, their relative sin thriving in a subset of similarly elite teams. It shouldn't be this way. If you watch the literally waterlogged slog Saturday afternoon, January 3rd, between Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers, the Bucs won, sort of, 16-14. Then you probably didn't feel like you were witnessing some juggernaut deserving of the comforts of being home next weekend ahead of its postseason opener, merely because an 8-9 record is sufficient to win the lowly ACC or NFC South. Okay, maybe we should find a way to get the Atlanta Falcons or New Orleans Saints NFC South also-rans who are presently playing much better football than the Panthers or Bucs, an at-large bid. Additionally, it's not unprecedented for the team seeded fourth, as the NFC South champs will be, to wind up hosting a conference championship game if enough chaos befalls the team seated above it. By comparison, at least 5 teams could wind up with 11 wins or more, but have no hope of a postseason home game. Just a year after the Minnesota Vikings got stuck with a wild card despite going 14-3, the most wins by a team that didn't win its division. It doesn't sit right. It's akin to Boise State getting a CFP bye week, an oversight that was quickly corrected. The NFL could have addressed its own issue in 2025 and nearly did, the Detroit Lions making a proposal last March which encouraged league owners to amend the current playoff seeding format to allow wildcard teams to be seeded higher than division champions if the wildcard team has a better regular season record. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. More than reasonable. It's absolutely the correct approach for a football team system rigged to produce parity. Why wouldn't you reward teams that actually achieve excellence with a seed commensurate to its win total? The old school purists, and I frequently consider myself one of them, will argue that winning a division is sacrosanct, an accomplishment deserving of the consequential home game as the postseason starts. Honestly, it now sounds a lot like those empty suits who used to defend the sanctity and pageantry of college football bowl system. And whatever would we do without Duke's Mayo Bowl or Clutching Pearls, the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl? Somewhat surprisingly, the Lions' proposal actually got some traction last spring before ultimately being tabled, though maybe one sloppy Saturday in January will fuel it with more momentum in the future. And granted, it was easier to defend the argument of fully rewarding division winners 4 decades ago, when there were 3 in a 14-team conference. Half of most teams' schedules at that time was made up of divisional foes and inherently made those games more valuable and compelling. But the NFL realigned in 2002, going to 8 4-team divisions across the 2 conferences. In the era of the 17-game regular season, 65% of a given club's schedule is against non-divisional opponents, meaning it's not uncommon to thrive against potentially subpar intra-divisional foes, struggle mightily against the rest of the league, and still wind up with the crown. Strike seasons notwithstanding, the 2025 Bucks or Panthers will become the 5th sub-500 team to make the playoffs in the Super Bowl era, which dates to 1966. Something that had never occurred prior to the 2010 campaign. And Sunday night's winner-take-all AFC North battle between Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers conferred a similar reward, even though the 6 other AFC teams that had already qualified for the playoffs all had at least 11 wins. Divisions make sense in the NFL. They've maintained and or created natural geographic rivalries and afford a little extra warranted currency when it comes time to breaking ties for playoff entry. But winning one should confer no more than a playoff berth. No way these Bucks or Panthers deserve to be seated higher than the San Francisco 49ers or Los Angeles Rams, teams that, along with top-seeded Seattle Seahawks, have made the NFC West the league's preeminent division in 2025, even as they've routinely beaten up on one another. Baker Mayfield's next pick or Bryce Young's next 100-yard passing day should have to occur as a number 7 seed, toiling in front of hostile fans while they're accordingly derided, yet enjoyed for their shortcomings by them. And maybe you think this is a problem that solves itself. The last playoff team with a losing record, the 2022 Bucks, got smoked at home by Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys on a Monday night stage. That was the last one Tom Brady graced as a player. But 2 of the 4 teams that have won divisions with losing records have actually advanced the divisional round. Bottom line, tradition is nice. Fairness is better. The next headline is the NFL early Week 18 winners, losers. Darnold rides high as Seahawks rule the NFC, by Nate Davis, USA Today. The NFL runs a risk every May when its schedule comes out, hoping those TBD slots it reserves for the Saturday of Week 18 ultimately get filled by games worthy of the standalone broadcast windows. January 3rd provided further proof that the league knows what it's doing, serving up a pair of matchups with massive postseason stakes. And even then, the schedule makers got another win. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers' 16-14 defeat of the Carolina Panthers, actually failing to decide the NFC South title. On the other side of the country, the Seattle Seahawks dominated the San Francisco 49ers 13-3 to win the NFC West and the conference's top seed. Scoreboards aside, here are the winners, losers, and otherwise from Saturday's games. Neither winner nor loser NFC South. The Bucs and Panthers now knotted with 8 and 9 records. The winner of the division was still unknown going into Sunday. In a vacuum, Tampa Bay owns the common games tiebreaker that puts the team in its near perennial spot atop the division. But if the Atlanta Falcons created a 3-way tie by winning Sunday, Carolina would get the tiebreaker by virtue of its 3-1 mark against the Falcons and the Bucs, eclipsing the two other teams. The ironic aspect? Atlanta and the New Orleans Saints are clearly the division's best squads at this point in the season. Winners, Seattle Seahawks. Ironically, they've been a better road team in their 2 seasons under coach Mike Macdonald, but the Hawks have also won 5 in a row at Lumen Field, traditionally one of the most raucous venues in the league. Seattle has won 10 of its last 11 postseason games at home, though the loss 5 years ago to the Rams came in the Seahawks' most recent playoff appearance in the Pacific Northwest. Still, if nothing else, the number 1 seed not only affords that precious week off, it spares the Seahawks from a far-flung trip to the nation's corner and forces another team to possibly take a long flight there. Sam Darnold. Who says he can't win the big game? Like Seattle linebacker Ernest Jones the fourth, said, well, we can't repeat what he said, but job well done, Sam. Mother Nature, still undefeated. The footing at Tampa's Raymond James Stadium was bad, and it was evidence as players slipped, kicks were affected, and the general quality of play was impacted in such a critical game. Seattle D. The Seahawks limited the 49ers to 3 points. After San Francisco had averaged 42.3 over its previous 3 games. Enough said. ESPN. The home of Monday Night Football continues to enjoy an expanded presence late in the season, broadcasting both of Saturday's consequential duels with another to come during the wild card round of the playoffs. A year from now, ESPN will have the Super Bowl for the first time, though it will be simulcast on ABC. And Disney's NFL footprint is only likely to continue growing ahead of its pending deal to acquire NFL Network, Red Zone Channel, and other media assets owned and controlled by the NFL. The crossover between the entities is readily apparent. Atlanta Falcons. Hey, a team eliminated from postseason contention weeks ago now had something tangible to play for Sunday in its finale against the Saints. Not only would a season-ending 4-game winning streak save this coaching staff, but knocking off the Bucs in the process would be especially sweet. In what might have been the 14-year veteran's final game, or at least a linebacker's last one with the Bucs, his contract set to expire after the season, he recorded 6 stops Saturday to tie the Hall of Famer Derek Brooks as the most prolific tackler in franchise history. Rico Dowdle. The Carolina running back who ran for nearly 1,100 yards in 2024 for the Dallas Cowboys but was grossly undervalued by them and the free agent market has essentially matched that figure this season and earned a $1 million bonus Saturday by reaching 1,350 yards from scrimmage. Dowdle, who signed a $2.75 million contract with the Panthers before the season and prior to hitting his incentive Saturday and others previously, should see a lot more green on the market a few months from now. Losers, Rico Dowdle. With Carolina set up in the Bucs' red zone early in the fourth quarter and trailing by 9, Dowdle slipped while tossing the ball back to quarterback Bryce Young on an apparent flea flicker, fumble, and pretty much game, set, and match. Tampa Bay didn't actually convert the turnover into points, but did burn nearly 6 precious minutes off the clock before getting a field goal try blocked. Regardless, Dowdle still gets to keep his millie. San Francisco 49ers. Not only did they fail to climb up to the top spot in the NFC, Quarterback Brock Purdy suffered a stinger near the end of the loss and only has a week to get right before the Niners hit the playoff road. Christian McCaffrey, a guy who's deservedly getting something of a late MVP push, was responsible for a late turnover. Unable to hang on to a Purdy pass near the goal line in the fourth quarter that turned into an interception, and one that effectively ended the Niners' shot at that coveted number 1 seed. It's a play that I absolutely have to make, McCaffrey said afterwards. Jason Myers. Seattle's kicker missed 2 field goals from 47 and 26 yards. Not the kind of momentum you want to carry into the Super Bowl tournament. Third quarter officiating in Tampa. Whether it was the lateral that was prematurely blown dead, though the officials still moved the Panthers back 7 yards, or the dubious offensive pass interference against Titoria McMillan, which wiped out his 32-yard reception, the Zebras were especially unkind to Carolina as it tried to whittle down a 13-6 halftime deficit. 49ers offense. Kicking off Saturday's games without injured starters, especially studs like all-universe left tackle Trent Williams and WR1 Ricky Pearsall, was hardly an ideal way to take on the mighty Seahawks defense with so much hanging in the balance. The next headline in today's sports section is Schifrin finishes second. Winning streak ends at 6 by Nancy Armour, USA Today. And there's a picture of Mikaela Schifrin of Team United States in action during the Audi FIS Alpine Ski World Cup Women's Slalom on January 4th in Kranjska Gora, Slovenia. Mikaela Schifrin's winning streak is over. Schifrin finished second in the slalom on Sunday, January 4th at Kranjska Gora, Slovenia, the first time she has been beaten in her signature discipline this World Cup season. Schifrin had won the first 5 slalom races this 25-26 season, and 6, including the World Cup finals last season. Quote, "I don't believe it's possible to win every race in the season with the competition level. Actually, I hope it wouldn't be possible," said Schifrin, whose 6 wins in a row were one shy of her career best streak. "Still, I wanted to give it my best shot. But I think this was a really, really amazing show," Schifrin added. "I was grateful to be a part of it, and I'm motivated to push harder to find more speed for the next race." Schifrin's time of 1 minute 40.34 seconds was 0.14 seconds behind Camille Rast of Switzerland. When Rast crossed the finish line, Schifrin gave a big smile and then greeted Rast with a hug. It was Rast's second win in as many days following her victory in the giant slalom on Saturday, and capped an emotional weekend for the Swiss skier. Rast grew up near the resort in Crans, Montana, where at least 40 people were killed when a fire broke out during New Year's Eve celebrations. Quote, "I cannot explain how hard it is to have a race weekend with back-to-back victories in 2 different events. It's so exhausting," Schifrin said of Rast. "She had a spectacular weekend. It's really motivating to see that. It's very inspiring." And I think for everyone watching, you just have to appreciate the talent and the work ethic and the ability that it takes for an athlete to do that. She showed up and she did it amazing. End quote. It was a good day overall for the U.S. team, which had 4 skiers in the top 20. Paula Molson was 4th, A.J. Hurt was 13th, and Nina O'Brien was 19th. Rast's 2 victories this weekend brings her closer to Schifrin in the overall standing. Schifrin now has 823 points, 120 more than Rast. Everyone likes to win, right? But I think it's better to have these really challenging testing moments and to rise to the challenge and to put out the best skiing possible. And then we get to have this showdown in the second run, Schifrin said, and I'm learning to love that, end quote. Schifrin dominated the early part of the season in slalom, winning her first 4 races by an average of 1.5 seconds. In a sport often decided by tenths and hundredths of a second, that's a whopping margin. But Rast has established herself as Schifrin's main rival over the past 2 weekends. Schifrin needed one of her most impressive comebacks of her career last weekend to extend her streak, erasing a 0.54 second deficit to Rast after the first run to win by 0.09 seconds. Rast was not going to be denied 2 weekends in a row. Rast had a 0.1 second lead after the first run, when she was more aggressive than Schifrin in the bottom half of the course. That was a manageable deficit to make up, and Schifrin looked as if she would be the winner once again with a blistering second run. But a slight mistake at the top, when Schifrin got a little wide around a gate, cost her time, and that left an opening for Rast, and she took it. Though she had fallen slightly behind midway through the course, Rast got herself back on track and made a furious dash to the finish. When she threw herself across the line, Schifrin's streak was over. She had beautiful skiing, both runs. She was just outstanding, Schifrin said. Still, Schifrin was happy with her own effort. There was something she wanted to do technically in the second run, and she felt as if she accomplished that. That could bode well for her next battle with Rast. Schifrin and the rest of the tech circuit have next weekend off before their next race, a slalom in Flachau, Austria, on January 13th. The only real improvement to make is just when the speed is coming that fast to be so consistent that it's there every turn. This second run, I was not backing off, Schifrin said. I would not change anything for the second run. I would just try to repeat this level as much as possible in the training next several weeks. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 31 minutes after the hour. The next headline in today's sports section, SPAC's ISU legacy as good as normal, by Nathan Baird, the Indianapolis Star. Brock Spack would have preferred that his Illinois State football team fly home immediately after its football championship subdivision playoff semifinal victory December 20th at Villanova. However, FCS rule requires road teams whose games kick off at 3 or later to travel the next day. So Spack, his assistant coaches and their families, and ISU administrators gathered in his room for an evening of celebration. The former Purdue player and assistant coach declined to describe the revelry, except to say that it reminded him of the scenes following Boilermaker Alamo Bowl victories in 1997 and 1998. Another victory Monday night, January 5th, would trigger a celebration unlike anything Normal, Illinois has ever seen. There's a buzz in the community right now, and it's a lot of fun, Spack said. It's what you imagine it would be. Illinois State plays number 2 Montana State in the 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time FCS National Championship game in Nashville. Yes, the same Montana State program where Joe Tiller, Spack's coaching mentor, played offensive line in the early 1960s. The decision to hire Danny Hope instead of promoting Spack to succeed Tiller still sparks butterfly effect speculation in West Lafayette. 3 of the 4 regimes that followed Tiller fell short of expectations or failed outright. The program is again climbing out of the Big Ten basement. By contrast, Spack will coach in his second FCS national title game. Whether he could have produced a more stable and successful era of Boilermaker football remains unanswerable. There's no question about his legacy in Bloomington Normal. He came to a school better known for its basketball legacy and made it to a nationally relevant football force. The program and the community stand one victory away from history. Quote, Brock has become the identity of Illinois State football, said Randy Reinhardt, a sports reporter covering Illinois State for Bloomington Normal's newspaper, The Pentagraph. How Illinois State football took on Brock Spack's identity. Spack believed he inherited sleeping FCS giant in 2009. Although Illinois State reached the playoffs 3 times in the 8 years before his arrival, many still identified the school with its basketball success. Doug Collins starred there before becoming the number one overall pick in the 1973 NBA draft. The Redbirds made 6 NCAA tournament trips between 1983 and 1998. The reputation shifted partly because men's basketball hasn't returned to the tournament since 1998, and partly because of Spack's success. Illinois State has made 7 playoff appearances since 2013, including 5 quarterfinals and a runner-up finish in 2014. Reinhardt, whose tenure covering ISU predates Spack's arrival, said more than 5,000 fans traveled to Plano, Texas 12 years ago for the championship game. An even larger contingent is expected Monday for the shorter drive to a bigger stadium. Brock has at least brought football up to the level of basketball in terms of interest with Illinois State fans, Reinhardt said. It would be huge for the community, huge for the university. The scene around Hancock Stadium has been more subdued than usual during the playoff. The stands have been empty throughout the run. Illinois State opened its season with a 35-3 loss at Oklahoma, which qualifies for the college football playoff. FCS teams occasionally take those lumps for a payday. SPAC's Redbirds won at Colorado State as recently as 2018 and at Northwestern 2 years earlier. This team, though, thrived on the road after opening day. It has not lost an FCS game away from home. Illinois State always faced an opening round road assignment because Hancock Stadium hosts the Illinois High School State Championships. The Redbirds beat Southeastern Louisiana 21-3 in the opener. Then came the 29-28 upset at number 1 North Dakota State, avenging a 33-16 home loss from the regular season. ISU earned another flight to UC Davis and won 42-21. SPAC said he had never been to Philadelphia before the semifinal at Villanova, where a 30-14 victory secured the trip to Nashville. In the Big Ten, teams stay together at a local hotel, even for regular season home games. FCS rules forbid that, so teams only lodge together on the road. SPAC speculated those bonding opportunities may help explain this team's 9-0 run in hostile territory. Quote, "The one thing I can tell you about this team that kind of defines them is they are very comfortable being uncomfortable," SPAC said. "This team likes to be on the road, they love each other, and they like being around each other." SPAC said Tiller, famous for unleashing a Drew Brees-led passing attack to the Big Ten, envied the rushing attacks of programs such as Iowa and Wisconsin. He believes his boss would admire these Redbirds. Running inside the zone of a out of a spread defense, ISU averages 100 spread offense. ISU averages 170.4 yards rushing per game. UC Davis ran only 6 plays in the third quarter of the quarterfinals. Villanova ran 5 in the third quarter of the semifinals. Quote, "They play really, really tough, hard-nosed, blue-collar kind of football that I think a lot of people get on board with here in town," said Jason Drangwitz, the head coach at Normal Community High School, who has sent several players through SPAC's program. SPAC became Illinois State's all-time winningest coach in 2021 and has run his record to 123-78. Yet over the course of 16 years, he had to adapt on and off the field. He calls the money now available to pay players stunning. Yet this new era also forces coaches to make a binary choice: figure it out or get out. Every off-season brings the threat of better-funded FBS programs raiding the Redbirds roster. SPAC said ISU has solid revenue share resources for its level. Still, revenue share remains more of a reward for some players after enrollment rather than an opening pitch. Following the Villanova win, SPAC said star receiver Daniel Sobkowicz drew a lot of interest from other programs the previous off-season. Illinois State could not fully match those financial offers. Sobkowicz stayed anyway and enters the championship game with 1,089 yards and 18 touchdowns on 78 receptions. That stability likely also plays a role in the team's ability to win so consistently on the road in elimination scenarios. Yet the biggest benefit is simple. Illinois State keeps its best players. Quote, "I've had players on every team I've had here who could play at Purdue," SPAC said. "I've had guys who could play on the Rose Bowl team, could have started and played." The brink of a championship. SPAC already lifted something more precious than a trophy during this postseason run. North Dakota State was 12-0 when Illinois State visited the Fargo Dome in the second round. The Redbirds had not beaten their Missouri Valley Football Conference rivals since 2010, a span of 14 consecutive losses. 2 of those defeats ended ISU seasons in the playoff. Tommy Rittenhouse and Sobkowicz connected for 2 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of a stunning 29-28 victory. On the field afterwards, SPAC met his then 2-month-old grandson, Louis, for the first time. His daughter, Alicia Mays, a former Purdue softball player who previously served as SPAC's director of football operations, and her husband, John, brought the newborn from their home in Minnesota. SPAC said he always evaluated job openings by asking himself whether he could live in that community for the rest of his life, because I might have to. His family built deep connections in Bloomington Normal. His son, Brent, played for the Redbirds. His wife, Purdue grad Amy Levignette, has worked extensively with Special Olympics Illinois. That win in Fargo was a long time coming. The Bison loomed as the chief nemesis of SPAC's tenure. They were three-time defending national champions when they met ISU in Frisco, Texas, after the 2014 season for the FCS championship. The Redbirds seemed poised for a massive, program-defining upset after taking the lead with under 2 minutes to play. Future NFL Pro Bowl and Indianapolis Colts quarterback Carson Wentz, though, drove North Dakota State down and scored game-winning touchdown himself with 37 seconds remaining. SPAC was that close to delivering ISU's first national championship. After 16 seasons, SPAC knows what a victory in Nashville would mean in Normal. They've learned to become a football school as well, SPAC said. It's been a lot of fun to have an impact like that and see the pride and excitement in people's faces. Win or lose, SPAC's legacy as a head coach speaks for itself too. The next headline in today's sports section is Montana State, Illinois State vie for FCS title. The football championship subdivision national championship game returns to Tennessee on Monday, January 5th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN for the first time in 16 years when Montana State plays Illinois State. It will be the first time the title game is played in Nashville, with the two teams squaring off at Vanderbilt's First Bank Stadium. The championship game was played in Chattanooga from 1997 to 2009. Montana State, 13-2, won the national title in 1984 when the game was in Charleston, South Carolina. Illinois State, 12-4, has never won the title but played in the championship game in 2014 when it lost to North Dakota State 29-27 in Frisco, Texas. Will FCS National Championship remain in Nashville beyond 2027? Nashville was announced as the site for the FCS Championship game in early 2025, moving it from Frisco, where it had been played for the past 15 years. The FCS Championship game is scheduled to return to Nashville in 2027. The Nashville Sports Council and the Ohio Valley Conference, which is based in Nashville, are co-hosts of the event, and officials from both organizations have made it clear they hope to keep the championship game here long term. How Montana State, Illinois State reached the title game. Montana State defeated Yale 21-13 in the second round of the playoffs after having a first-round bye. Montana State then beat Stephen F. Austin 44-28 in the quarterfinals, and Montana in 48-23 in the semifinals. Illinois State earned an at-large bid in the playoffs. The Redbirds defeated Southeastern Louisiana 21-3 in the first round of playoffs, then beat top seed North Dakota State 29-28 in the second round. Illinois State downed UC Davis 42-31 in the quarterfinals and Villanova 30-14 in the semifinals. Each of the Redbirds' playoff wins came on the road, making them the first in FCS history to win 4 straight road games in the playoffs to advance to the national title game. Montana State QB Justin Lamson's phenomenal stat line. Montana State quarterback Justin Lamson, a transfer from Stanford who made 3 starts for the Cardinal, has been incredibly accurate in the FCS playoffs. He's completed 43 of 61 passes, 70.5%, over 3 postseason games. Lamson has thrown for 547 yards with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. On the season, Lamson is 237 of 329 for 2,892 yards with 24 TDs and 3 interceptions. Illinois State wide receiver Daniel Sobkowitz has 7 TDs in the playoffs. Illinois State's Daniel Sobkowitz has been among the best receivers in FCS all season and has continued to shine in the playoffs. The All-Missouri Valley Conference player has 7 touchdown receptions in the playoffs. Sobkowitz now has 40 career receiving touchdowns, which puts him in the top spot on the program's career list. and he also sits atop the career receptions list with 257. He is in second place on the career receiving yards list, 3,507. Bobcats 1 win away from a 4-decade drought. Montana State enters the national title game on a 13-game winning streak after most recently dispatching Montana 48-23 with a dominant final quarter and a half as it scored 28 unanswered points. The Grizzlies rallied from an early 20-3 deficit to take a 23-20 lead before quarterback Lamson rushed for a TD following a pair of scoring tosses, including an 87-yard catch-and-run receiver Taco Dowler in the fourth quarter. Bryce Grebe added a pick six for the Bobcats defense late to the pile in the second victory over Montana in a month. It was the first playoff meeting in the century-plus history of the Brawl of the Wild rivalry series. Lamson completed 13 of 19 passes for 209 yards with his 3 total touchdowns, while Dowler hauled in 5 catches for 125 yards in the score. Adam Jones led the Bobcats' rushing attack with 131 yards and a touchdown. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 46 minutes after the hour. The Bobcats won their lone FCS, then Division I AA national title in 1984 as they defeated Louisiana Tech 19-6 under head coach Dave Arnold. Montana State won the NAIA national title in 1956 and the NCAA Division II championship in 1976, and are the only program to win it all at 3 different levels, according to 406 MT Sports. MSU mentor Brent Vigen has now led his team to the championship round for the 3rd time in his 5 seasons, falling both times to powerhouse North Dakota State. The Bobcats are 9th ranked scoring offense in the nation this season at over 37 points per game, and number 6 in scoring defense, allowing just over 17 points per contest. MSU is the 4th best rushing offense in this FCS at over 234 yards per game. Titan Fleischman was named a Stats Perform FCS All-American at offensive tackle, as was Caden Dowler at safety. Lamson was a second-teamer at QB, as was Paul Brott as defensive tackle, while defensive end Kenneth Iden IV was on the 3rd team. Illinois State shocked the FCS world with a 29-28 road win over number 1 North Dakota State on December 6th, following a first-round victory over Southeastern Louisiana. The Redbirds took down number 8 UC Davis 42-31 in the quarterfinals before a 30-14 triumph over number 12 Villanova in the semis. Quarterback Tommy Rittenhouse threw for 251 yards and 2 touchdowns in the win over Villanova, along with an interception, with receiver Daniel Sobkowitz catching 7 passes for 97 yards and a pair of scores. Victor Dawson led the Redbirds on the ground with 34 carries for 155 yards and a touchdown. Middle linebacker Ty Niekamp was named first-team All-American by Stats Perform FCS, while Sobkowitz and defensive back Shadwell Nkuba II, the second, were both third-team selections. The next headline in today's sports section reads, LSU-bound Weiss may help Rebels, by Matt Hayes and Sam Hutchins, USA Today. Ole Miss head football coach Pete Golding doesn't have total assurance 4 LSU-bound assistants will stay for the Rebels' college football playoff semifinal game. Quote, they have every opportunity, like they have up to this point, to be able to make that decision, Golding said January 3rd in a Fiesta Bowl news conference. Week in and week out, I don't dictate whether they do that or not. They are not employed by me. Up to this point, that's how it's been, and that's my expectation, end quote. A source with direct knowledge of the situation, speaking on the condition of anonymity, told USA Today Sports that offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. will continue coaching Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl semifinal against Miami. Number 6 Ole Miss, 13-1, will face number 10 Miami in the Fiesta Bowl on January 8th, 7:30 Eastern Time on ESPN in the CFP Finals. The winner will advance to the national championship game on January 19th in Miami versus the winner of the January 9th Peach Bowl between Indiana and Oregon. Weiss is the highest-ranking Ole Miss coach who will follow former coach Lane Kiffin to LSU. Weiss, running backs coach Kevin Smith, wide receivers coach George McDonald, and tight ends coach Joe Cox have been with Ole Miss and LSU simultaneously. It's an odd arrangement that has been successful. Ole Miss has beaten Tulane 41-10 and Georgia 39-34 in the CFP to advance to the Fiesta Bowl. Golding said communication with Kiffin has been great, and the idea is to retain the outgoing coaches for the Fiesta Bowl and a potential national championship game. Quote, "The idea is the same guys that have coached the same positions all year will do that in this game like they have up to this point," Golding said. Since LSU is now employing the coaches and our participation with Ole Miss is part of a gentleman's agreement, Golding couldn't guarantee their status. "I don't know," Golding said. "Do you know if you were going to show up to work tomorrow?" "It's grown people making decisions. I have no idea. We're going to go out there and spot the ball. We've got plenty of people in this building who showed up this morning. We'll be just fine." The transfer portal opened January 2nd, and schools are trying to add their rosters. Conflicting reports about Kevin Smith. 24/7 Sports reported January 3rd that Smith will leave Ole Miss to be LSU's running backs coach on a full-time basis. On3 later reported Smith had said he planned to finish out with Ole Miss. Ole Miss hired John David Baker to be the offensive coordinator on December 9th for the 2026 season. Baker coached at East Carolina in 2024 and 2025. He was a 2024 Broyles Award nominee in his first year when ECU went 8-5. Golding said there are plenty of coaches to turn to in event he needs a backup plan. He emphasized that the final result is dictated by players, not play callers. He is not worried about uncertainty spoiling the game plan. "It's going to have no impact on the game, but you all can keep blowing it up and make it a big deal." Next headline reads, 10 elite teams needing QBs in transfer portal, by Paul Meyerberg, USA Today. The opening of the college football transfer portal will trigger a game of musical chairs at quarterback, guaranteed to impact the 2026 season race for the national championship. As evidence, just look at the college football playoff, where over half the teams in the field started a transfer under center. Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Miami, and Tulane. One team that could influence how things unfold is Oregon, which is waiting on Dante Moore's NFL draft decision. If he leaves, the Ducks will be near the top of the list for every high-profile transfer, potentially shaping plans for other contenders searching for a new starter. As the portal heats up, let's connect 10 Power 4 programs with the best possible transfer fit. Miami. Should Moore return, Miami's recent success with Cam Ward and Carson Beck will make Coral Gables the most desirable destination for this year's transfer class. One strong match is former Arizona State starter Sam Leavitt, who burst onto the national scene in 2024 but struggled through an injury-marred redshirt sophomore year. After a pair of one-year rentals, Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes could be enticed by the chance to secure someone who could be a multiple-season solution. Texas Tech. Texas is waiting on Cincinnati transfer Brent Sorsby, a native Texan who has starting experience, Big 12 experience, and a dual-threat skill set that fits nicely in the Red Raiders scheme with Baron Morton moving on. Sorsby, however, could choose to forego his final season for the NFL if he receives a strong draft grade. Indiana. Look for Kurt Signetti's search for Fernando Mendoza's replacement to land on TCU transfer Josh Hoover, who blossomed over 2+ years as a starter in Sonny Dykes' scheme. While he'll need to trim his turnovers, the rising senior has the makeup to help maintain the Hoosiers' evolution into a Power 4 powerhouse. As a high school recruit, Hoover was verbally committed to Indiana before flipping to the Horned Frogs. Penn State. Drew Aller has exhausted his eligibility, and replacement Ethan Grunkmeyer has an uncertain future. This one isn't complicated. New coach Matt Campbell should be reunited with rising senior Rocco Becht, who started 39 games for Campbell at Iowa State and would ease his transition to the Big Ten. LSU. Portal options might be tripping over themselves to get to the front line to play for Lane Kiffin at LSU. One is DJ Lagway, who oozes talent but never put things together in his 2 years at Florida. But Kiffin and the Tigers are likely waiting on a possible eligibility waiver for current Ole Miss starter Trinidad Chambliss, who has petitioned the NCAA for a 6th year. If he's successful, Baton Rouge would be the obvious fit. Florida. With Lagway gone and new coach John Summerall in, the Gators could be in the market for multiple transfers to add to what is currently a thin quarterback room. One immediate connection is with Georgia Tech transfer Aaron Philo, who impressed in 8 appearances over the last 2 years under new Florida coordinator Buster Faulkner. In his one start in 2025, Philo completed 21 of 28 passes for 373 yards against Gardner-Webb. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for January 5th, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been David Frothingham.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 3 of Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. Following that, at 3 o'clock is Smithsonian Magazine, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have